It was 4:13 a.m. when my doorbell rang, twice. Not once, not a polite little ding-dong. Twice, fast, like whoever was out there didn't care if they woke the whole neighborhood. I remember it exactly because I'd just finished my night shift at the campus library. I was 24 at the time, still juggling grad school and 2 part-time jobs to keep my head above water. I hadn't even taken my shoes off yet. My name's Connor, by the way, and this is the story of the moment I realized my family didn't just have favorites. They had disposable people. I wasn't expecting anyone. I don't live the kind of life where people make spontaneous 4 a.m. visits. And yet, when I peeked through the peephole, there he was. My grandpa, standing alone on my porch in a frayed sweater, holding a beat-up duffel bag in one hand and a pill organizer in the other. No coat, no phone, no smile. Just a confused, tired man who looked like he'd been dragged through a storm and left to dry on my welcome mat. I yanked the door open. "Grandpa," I asked, even though I could already feel it in my gut. Something was wrong. He blinked slowly. "Connor, they said you'd take care of me." They. A freezing breeze swept in behind him, and with it came the gut punch of betrayal that I wouldn't fully register until much later. My parents had done some questionable stuff over the years, silent treatments, guilt tripping, conveniently forgetting birthdays, but dumping a 78-year-old man with early-stage dementia on my doorstep in the dead of night? That was a new level of heartless. I brought him inside immediately, sat him on the couch, and wrapped him in the throw blanket I usually reserved for chilly movie nights. He was shivering, not just from the cold, I realized, but from exhaustion and confusion. He kept asking if we'd be home soon. My one-bedroom apartment wasn't big, but it was safe. Warm. Nothing like what he deserved, but more than what he had right now. I tried calling my parents. No answer. I texted my mom. "Why is Grandpa here? What's going on?" The read receipt popped up almost instantly. No reply. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Still nothing. It wasn't until 5:01 a.m. that I got a response from my dad. "He can stay with you now. We're redoing the upstairs. He was going to be in the way anyway. It's better this way." That was it. No explanation. No apology. Not even a fake excuse like he wanted to be closer to you. Or, "It's just for a few days." Just a text. A shrug in message form. Let me back up a little. Growing up, I never had the typical Leave It to Beaver family dynamic. My parents, Laura and Dennis, were always a little self-centered. Not openly cruel. Not technically neglectful. But there was this underlying current in our house that everything existed to serve their narrative. My older sister, Vanessa, was the golden child. Straight A's, violin prodigy, head cheerleader. She hit all the checkboxes they loved. I was the other one. Quiet. Kept to myself. Loved drawing and books, and didn't have much to say at dinner unless I was asked directly. It's not that they hated me. They just never really noticed me. The only person who truly did was Grandpa. He wasn't my biological grandpa. He was my mom's stepdad. But he was the one who showed up. School plays? He sat in the front row with a huge thermos of tea. Bad breakups? He brought over donuts and said, "Let's yell at the TV together." When I got into college, he mailed me a handwritten letter that said, "Proud" doesn't even begin to cover it. Meanwhile, my mom sent a thumbs-up emoji. So yeah, seeing him drop like some unwanted Amazon package at my door hit me harder than I can explain. Not just because of what it said about how they saw him, but what it confirmed about how they saw me. I called off everything the next day, class, work, everything. Took Grandpa to the clinic just to make sure he was okay. He was physically fine, but the doctor said his memory was deteriorating faster than expected. When I asked him what had happened that night, all he could say was, "They said it was a short trip, just for the weekend." But I knew when I saw their faces, it wasn't. I felt sick. I didn't respond to my parents for 2 days. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't turn into a screaming match. When I finally called, it wasn't a talk. It was to listen. I wanted to hear them admit it. The selfishness. The calculation. I was still clinging to some hope that this was a misunderstanding. Instead, my mom answered like nothing had happened. "Connor, sweetie, did he settle in okay? Why is he here?" I asked. She sighed, like I was the one being dramatic. "Connor, we needed to start the renovations. The contractor had an opening this month. You know how long the wait lists are right now. And Grandpa just, what? Had to go. He was going to a home, but they didn't have a vacancy. And you have the extra pull-out couch, don't you? Besides, it'll give you two some quality time. You always loved Grandpa. You're not answering the question, I said, my voice low. Why did you leave him here without telling me? Why 4 a.m.? It was the only time Dennis could get the van, she said. And Vanessa needed her room prepped before she moves back in. I froze. She's moving back in? Well, just for a bit. My mom chirped, like it was the most natural thing in the world. You know how tough the market is right now? And she's got that new job at the firm. She needs her space. We're converting Grandpa's old room into an office/guest room for her. Plus, you don't need much room, right? I stared at the wall in my apartment. My books stacked in milk crates because I couldn't afford a real shelf. My busted couch that creaked every time I sat on it. The leftover mac and cheese I was rationing out in Tupperware. And across from me, Grandpa slowly flipping through a catalog upside down, lost in his own mind. They dumped him. For drywall and track lighting. So my sister could have a Pinterest-worthy workspace. And the worst part? They didn't even see it as cruel. To them, it was just logistics. Like moving furniture. That was the moment something cracked in me. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just said, I'll take care of him. But don't expect me to be okay with this. My mom made that little disapproving sound she always made when I wasn't being grateful enough. Well, maybe once things settle, we can have a nice dinner together. Vanessa's birthday is coming up. You can bring him too. Bring him. Like he was a +1. An afterthought. I hung up. That should have been the end of it, right? Just a messed up family dumping their elderly parent and washing their hands of him. But it wasn't. Because the thing about people like my parents is, they never just take one step over the line. Once they know you'll bend, they lean. Hard. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing the little things. Grandpa's prescriptions? Suddenly no longer refilled automatically. I had to call, chase doctors, cover the gaps. His pension? Redirected. Until I found out and had to go through a nightmare of paperwork to fix it. And every time I tried to ask questions or raise concerns. Radio silence. Until the day Vanessa herself decided to drop by. Not to see Grandpa. Not to say thanks. But to ask a favor. That's when everything started to unravel. That's when the fuse was lit. And trust me, the explosion was coming. 3 weeks after Grandpa moved in, just as we were settling into some kind of routine, the buzzer rang again. Midday this time. I'd been helping Grandpa sort through his old medications, trying to figure out which were current and which were 5-year-old leftovers from doctors who'd since retired or passed away. He was doing better, still had trouble remembering where the bathroom was sometimes, but he smiled more. Laughed when I burned toast. Even started calling me by name again instead of the tall one. But when that buzzer rang, everything in me tensed. I had a gut feeling before I even checked the intercom. And sure enough, when I pressed the button, the voice on the other end chirped. Hey, it's me, Vanessa, the golden one. My sister hadn't visited me in over 2 years, despite living just across the city. No calls. No birthday messages. Not even a like on my graduation post. But here she was, breezing back into my life like it was a spa appointment. I buzzed her in. She strutted into my apartment in a spotless white trench coat, oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara. She looked around with thinly veiled disdain, then said, Wow, you're really living rustically, huh? No, hi. No, how's Grandpa? Just that smirk she always wore like armor. I kept my voice even. What do you want, Vanessa? She tossed her bag on my only armchair and sat like it was a throne. Don't be so cold. I came to talk. Grandpa wandered out of the kitchen just then, carrying a mug with no liquid in it. Is it Tuesday? No, Grandpa, I said gently. It's Friday. You just had your oatmeal. Vanessa blinked at him. Oh wow, he looks even worse than I thought. I stared at her. What did you expect? A miracle cure? She shrugged. I don't know. Mom said he was doing fine. I figured you'd have, like, cleaned him up a bit or something. I clenched my jaw. He's not a pet, Vanessa. Geez, chill. It's just, look, I'll get to the point. She sat forward, crossing her legs with exaggerated grace. I need a huge favor. Of course she did. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward me. My company's hosting this networking event at a downtown hotel. Super high-end. But I need someone to watch my dog that weekend. I blinked. Your dog? Yeah, Miso. You'd love him. He's a Shiba. Very smart, very needy. But Mom and Dad said no, and my usual sitter is in Cabo. So I figured, hey, you're already doing the caretaker thing. I genuinely thought she was joking. You want me to babysit your designer dog while taking care of Grandpa for free? She smiled. Well, yeah. I figured you'd be used to it by now. Something in me snapped. No, I said firmly. Her smile faltered. Wait, what? No, I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your dog sitter. I'm not your family dumping ground. Connor, calm down. No, you don't get to stroll in here after years of silence, after helping dump our grandfather on me, and act like I'm just your errand boy. She stood, her voice sharp. Don't be so dramatic. It's just a favor. No, Vanessa. You want a favor? I already did one. A huge one. I'm taking care of Grandpa full-time while finishing school and working. You don't get to play the helpless princess here. She scoffed. Wow. Mom said you were getting uppity lately. I froze. She said what? Vanessa grabbed her bag, flipping her hair back. That you were being all high and mighty ever since you took Grandpa in. Like you think you're some saint or something. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because if I had, I might have said something I regretted. She left without another word. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about that phrase. High and mighty. As if doing the bare minimum for a sick old man was a power move. As if I was somehow the problem. And suddenly, so many little things started clicking together. The way they'd stopped answering my calls. The way Grandpa's insurance info had been mysteriously misplaced when I tried to get coverage transferred. The way our family group chat had been oddly silent since he arrived. They weren't grateful. They were annoyed. Because I hadn't just accepted the responsibility quietly. I'd made it visible. In their minds, I was showing them up. Making them look bad. And if there was one thing my parents hated, it was being seen as wrong. The next blow came 2 weeks later. I received a letter. Yes, an actual letter from my mom. Inside was a single page, typed, with the header, Temporary Guardianship Agreement. She wanted me to sign it. Essentially, the document stated that I was taking full responsibility for Grandpa's care until further notice, including medical decisions, financial oversight, and living arrangements. It wasn't legally binding, but it was very clear. No signature from her. No signature from my dad. Just a space for mine. There was a sticky note attached. Just a formality, sweetie. Makes things easier for everyone. I didn't sign it. Instead, I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Connor, so good to hear your voice. What is this? I asked flatly. Oh, that? Just something our lawyer suggested. Nothing big. You know, for clarity's sake. For clarity, I echoed. Well, you know, it's important to have things on paper. So the doctors know who to call. And if anything happens. You mean if he dies? She paused. Connor, don't be morbid. I'm not. I'm being real. Because you're the one who's treating this like a business transaction. That's not fair. You're being very uncooperative lately. I'm being realistic. You dumped him here at 4 a.m. like trash. You ignore my calls. You send my sister to ask me for favors instead of checking on him. And now you want to make it all legal, so you can walk away with a clean conscience? I could hear her jaw clench through the phone. Connor, we did what we had to do. We couldn't manage him anymore. And Vanessa's got a future to build. And I don't. Don't twist my words. No, I'm hearing your words. Loud and clear. She hung up. From that point on, things got colder. They stopped sending mail to Grandpa entirely. No birthday card. No holiday calls. When he got sick with the flu in November and I had to rush him to urgent care, they didn't answer a single message. But what broke me wasn't their silence. It was Grandpa. He kept asking when he could go home. At first, I tried to explain. You are home, Grandpa. No, he'd say. With your mom. She said I could come back once the painting was done. I didn't know what to say. He didn't remember the way they'd left him. He didn't understand the silence. And every time he asked, a little part of me shattered. I started documenting everything. Every doctor visit. Every expense. Every call unanswered. Not out of spite, but because deep down, I was starting to feel like something big was coming. Some reckoning. Some confrontation. And I wanted to be ready. December rolled in like a sledgehammer. Vanessa posted photos online of her new home office, formerly Grandpa's room. Custom wallpaper. Matching white oak bookshelves. A neon sign that said girl bossing. She'd converted the closet into a coffee bar. No mention of Grandpa. No trace. I showed him the photos, gently. He stared for a long moment. That's my room, he said quietly. Then looked at me. Why's there no bed? Because they erased you, I wanted to say. But instead I said, because this is your room now. He didn't smile. Just nodded. and walked slowly back to the couch. That night, I cried. I'm not proud of it, but I cried. Not just for him. For me. For the little boy who used to watch Grandpa build birdhouses in the backyard. Who used to sneak him peanut brittle when Mom said no sweets. Who believed that family meant something. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that they didn't even feel bad about it. And that's when I started planning. Not revenge. Not yet. But something close. A line in the sand. A boundary. Because I knew, they'd come back eventually. Not for Grandpa, but for something else. And when they did, I wouldn't be the quiet, obedient son anymore. I'd be the one holding the cards. They say betrayal doesn't always come with fireworks or screaming matches. Sometimes, it comes in silence. In a signature. In a knock you weren't expecting. Or worse, no knock at all. For me, it came on a snowy Thursday morning in late January. The heater in my apartment was rattling again, groaning like it wanted to retire early. Grandpa was bundled in 2 cardigans and sipping instant coffee like it was fine wine. We'd fallen into a strange, gentle rhythm over the last few months. Not perfect. Some days he forgot my name or asked where his wife was. She'd passed in 2012. But there was a kind of peace in our bubble. We made grilled cheese together, watched old westerns, played Guess What This Pill Does, using his ancient med kit. I was starting to believe things might be okay. Until I got the letter. It wasn't from my parents. It wasn't even from a lawyer. It was from a senior care facility. The letter was short and disgustingly polite, thanking me for my upcoming visit and confirming my scheduled intake appointment for Mr. Richard Hallberg, my grandpa, on February 3rd. It listed fees, services, amenities, a whole section about dignified end-of-life care. I read it 3 times before I understood what it meant. They were sending him away, behind my back. I called the number on the letter immediately, pretending to be my father. The woman on the line was chipper, probably on her 4th cup of coffee, and told me everything I needed to know in a matter-of-fact voice that made me want to throw my phone at the wall. Yep, the intake was scheduled by his legal guardian, Mr. Dennis Hallberg. We're doing a light transition process, just paperwork for now. No stress on the family. Door-to-door pickup, all taken care of. I forced my voice to stay calm. And he's aware of this. A pause. Your father? Yes. We've had several calls. No, I mean the patient. Richard. My grandfather. Oh, she said, like it hadn't occurred to her that the man himself might want to know. I believe they were planning to explain it closer to the date. It's often easier that way. I hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there on the floor of my tiny kitchen for almost an hour, the letter clenched in my fist, listening to Grandpa hum the theme from Bonanza in the next room. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something deeper. Something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Rage. I'd tolerated a lot. The silence. The guilt-tripping. The erasure. But this was a surgical removal. A deletion. They were trying to quietly ship off the only decent adult I'd ever had in my life like he was a box of old books. Like they were sneaking a dead battery back into the drawer and hoping someone else would deal with it. They didn't even tell me. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I dug. I called the facility again, this time as myself. Asked questions. Took notes. Confirmed every detail. Then I stayed up until 3 a.m. reading the guardianship laws in my state. Turns out, unless a court removes it or the guardian voluntarily relinquishes it, they're allowed to make certain decisions without notifying anyone, even if the person in their care is living with someone else. So technically, they hadn't broken the law. But morally, they'd gone nuclear. The next morning, I call my father. Not my mom, him. The one who used to pat me on the shoulder instead of hugging me. The one who once said, "Love isn't spoken, it's implied." He answered on the 3rd ring. "Connor, you were going to send Grandpa to a care home." He was silent for a moment. Then, "Yes. You didn't think to tell me?" "I didn't think it was necessary." "You didn't think it was necessary?" "Connor," he said, in that calm, patronizing tone he used when I was 10 and couldn't figure out long division. "You're clearly overwhelmed. You're trying your best, and we appreciate that, but it's time for professionals to step in. No, you don't get to pull this savior complex garbage now. You left him here like a bag of laundry. It was temporary. You lied. You ghosted me for months." He sighed. "We thought it best to limit confusion." "For who? Him? Or you?" There was a pause. A longer one this time. "You're taking this very personally." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was that brittle, unhinged laugh you let out when someone's trying to gaslight you with a straight face. You're damn right I'm taking it personally. Because this is personal. Because he's a person. And because I love him. Which is more than I can say for either of you. He didn't respond to that. Just said, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and hung up. I sat in stunned silence, staring at the end-of-life pamphlet still sitting on my kitchen table. Private courtyard, it said in cheery font. On-call medical staff. Soft jazz every Thursday. But no mention of the confusion, the fear, the way Grandpa looked when he forgot what year it was, the way he flinched when someone raised their voice. They didn't care about his comfort. They cared about convenience, about reclaiming their schedule, their peace. They wanted their old life back. And Grandpa? He was just in the way. I didn't tell him about the home. I couldn't. He was having a good week. We'd started a puzzle together, one of those old Norman Rockwell ones with a million tiny pieces. He was remembering names again. Even made a joke about my ratty bathrobe. And I couldn't steal that from him. Not yet. But I did make a plan. I emailed the facility, posing as my father, and canceled the intake. Said we'd made other arrangements. Requested all notes be destroyed. Then I called a lawyer, one of those free legal aid clinics, and scheduled an appointment. It wasn't much, but I needed advice. I needed to know what my options were. Because clearly, my parents weren't going to stop. The next few days were quiet. Eerily so. I figured my dad would have told my mom by now, but neither of them reached out. Not even Vanessa. No calls. No emails. No visits. Until Sunday. That was when the second betrayal landed. The real one. I was doing laundry in the basement unit when Grandpa's voice echoed faintly down the stairs. "Connor? Someone's here." I rushed up, basket under one arm, and froze in the doorway. My mom was standing in my apartment. Inside. No knock. No call. Just there. She was wearing her church outfit. Pearl earrings, an overcoat, lipstick 2 shades too dark for her skin tone. She looked like she'd just stepped off a catalog cover. And on her face, a smile. "Hi, sweetie," she said. "We need to talk. How did you get in?" "Oh, your downstairs neighbor let me up." I told her I was your mom. I clenched my teeth. Of course she did. "Get out," I said flatly. She blinked. "Excuse me. You don't just walk into my place unannounced." "Connor, don't be rude. I'm here to help." "With what?" I asked. "Your guilt." Her expression hardened. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is lying to me, then trying to erase Grandpa behind my back." She held up her hands like she was diffusing a bomb. "Okay, let's calm down. I know you're upset, but we've made a decision, and we need you to support it." "We?" I echoed. "Yes, your father and I. And Vanessa. We talked it over, and we agree. This situation isn't sustainable. For anyone. He's not a situation. He's a person. You don't get it," she snapped, finally dropping the facade. "We've spent years dealing with this. The doctor visits. The repeating stories. The wandering. We've done our time." I stared at her. "He's not a prison sentence." She exhaled, like I was a stubborn child. "Connor, you're young. You have a life ahead of you. Do you really want to be tied to this forever?" "Yes," I said without thinking. "Because he's the only one who ever showed up for me." She rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. I'm being honest." And then, she did it. She walked to the table, pulled out a folder from her purse, and dropped it in front of me. Inside, a stack of documents. Medical releases. Facility contracts. A signed letter of consent, with my name forged in the corner. She smiled like it was a gift. "It's already done," she said. I stared at the signature. Sloppy. Curved like a child's. Not even close to mine. My chest tightened. "You faked my name. It was necessary. You committed fraud." She waved a hand. "Don't be so melodramatic. It's not legally binding. It's just paperwork to get the ball rolling. They needed someone's approval. You used my name," I said louder now, "because you were being difficult. That was it. That was the moment something broke in me. The final, brittle piece of trust that had been clinging to the idea that maybe, my parents were just confused. Overwhelmed. Human. But this was a choice. A betrayal. And I knew, with perfect clarity, that they would never stop until Grandpa was out of sight. Out of mind. Gone. But what they didn't realize was, they weren't the only ones who knew how to play dirty. After my mother walked out of my apartment that Sunday, cool, composed, like she hadn't just committed a crime and shattered the last thread holding our family together, I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the fake signature. My name, but not my hand. The swirl of the sea was all wrong. The letters had no rhythm, no weight. It looked like it had been copied from memory by someone who hadn't looked at my real handwriting in years. Which, I suppose, was exactly what it was. I didn't even shred it. I just left the folder open on the table and sat back in silence. My coffee had gone cold. My brain felt like it had, too. Grandpa was humming in the next room, putting the last few pieces of our puzzle together. The Rockwell one. We were almost done. He didn't know what had just happened. He didn't know the storm that was swirling just a few feet away. I felt hollow. Not furious, not tearful, just nothing. Like I'd been squeezed empty from the inside out. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was exhaustion. The kind that hits your bones and doesn't leave. That week, I barely spoke. I went to work, went to class, came home, helped Grandpa with his medicine, bathed him when he was too tired to do it himself, set reminders on his phone, even though half the time he forgot what the alarms were for. He was slipping, slowly. Some days, he'd call me Charlie, which had been his neighbor back in the 90s. Once, he tried to put on his shoes over his slippers. He wasn't broken, just dimming. And no one cared but me. Not my sister, who posted a boomerang of her new espresso machine the same day Grandpa forgot how to use the microwave. Not my mom, who'd apparently already scheduled a second intake meeting at a different care home, just in case. Not my dad, who sent me a single text that said, "You need to be more flexible." Flexible. Like I was some kind of folding chair they could plop their mistakes onto. For a moment, I considered giving in. I really did. I imagined signing the forms, packing Grandpa's things, letting the van take him, letting the professionals deal with it. No more late nights. No more grocery runs. No more trying to explain to a man who once taught me how to ride a bike that toothpaste doesn't go in the fridge. I thought about how easy it would be to wash my hands of it, to become what my parents were, practical. And then something happened. Two things, actually. The first was minor, almost forgettable. Grandpa asked me, one night while we were watching reruns of Gunsmoke, "Connor, did I raise you?" I paused. "No, Grandpa," I said gently. "You didn't raise me, but you were there." He frowned. Oh, I thought he'd leave it there. But a few seconds later, he added, "Well, if I'd had a son, I would have wanted him to be like you." I couldn't speak. He didn't say it for dramatic effect. He didn't even look at me when he said it. He was just watching the TV, sipping his lukewarm tea, mumbling something about Matt Dillon. But it stuck. It hit. I got up and went into the bathroom so he wouldn't see me cry. The second thing came 2 days later. A letter, again, this time from my university's financial aid office. My scholarship had been revoked. Not because of grades. I still had a 3.8 GPA, somehow, but because I hadn't recertified my housing status. I'd missed a stupid deadline by 3 days. Between Grandpa's doctor appointments, his prescriptions, work, and everything else, I'd forgotten one form. Just one. And now, I owed $5,200 for the semester, payable within 30 days. I couldn't breathe when I saw it. I had savings. Barely. A few hundred in my emergency fund. A credit card with a balance already creeping up from the last round of textbooks and groceries. Rent was due in a week. My boss had just cut everyone's hours because of budget issues. And now this. This was my limit. This was rock bottom. That night, I sat on my mattress, because the box spring had snapped 2 months ago, and I couldn't afford to replace it, and stared at the ceiling, wondering how everything had unraveled so fast. How I'd become the fallback, the nurse, the accountant, the grocery boy, the emotional punching bag, the adult, all while the actual adults in my life took turns pretending nothing was wrong. I was so tired. But somewhere in that darkness, a different thought began to creep in. Not the kind that screamed. The kind that whispered, "You're not trapped. You're not helpless. You know who they are now. And more importantly, they don't know who you've become." They still thought I was the quiet kid. The one who'd say, "Okay," and go along with the plan. The one who didn't make waves. They didn't see what taking care of Grandpa had done to me. They didn't see how it had forced me to learn, to fight, to document. I had a folder now. A thick one. With emails, text messages, photos, screenshots, copies of medical bills I'd paid myself, receipts, prescriptions, voicemails where my mom clearly said, "Connor can deal with it." I had the forged signature, too, still in the manila folder, untouched. And slowly, carefully, I started forming a plan. I wasn't going to scream at them. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to play their game. I was going to build something they didn't even realize existed. A case. I contacted a legal aid group again. Asked better questions this time. Got real answers. They confirmed what I suspected. The forged signature could be grounds for fraud, especially if it had been submitted to a facility or insurance provider. I could subpoena the intake records if it came to that. I also learned something else. That in our state, if an adult guardian is proven to be acting against the medical or emotional interests of their ward, especially when another family member is providing consistent, documented care, the guardianship can be challenged. In court, I wasn't there yet, but I was getting close. The next few weeks were quiet. I went on autopilot. Work, class, care, repeat. I sold my tablet to pay part of the tuition balance. Found a tutoring gig on weekends to make up the rest. Cut my meals down to 2 a day, instant ramen and rice, mostly. Grandpa didn't notice. He was still eating well. I made sure of that. Sometimes, I'd look at him and wonder how much time we had left. Not in a morbid way, just realistically. He was fading. Not quickly, but noticeably. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this time, this little sliver of borrowed normalcy, was the last good chapter in his life. And they were trying to steal it from him. I didn't tell him anything. Not about the home. Not about the money. Not about my plan. But I did start doing small things. I took photos of him smiling while we cooked. Recorded a video of him telling a story from when he was in the army, even though he got most of the dates wrong. Made notes of the days he remembered my name. Screenshotted the texts where he said, "Thank you for this, son," or "You're the only one who visits me." I wasn't collecting memories. I was building evidence. Because I knew they weren't done. People like my parents never admit they're wrong. They don't apologize. They don't self-reflect. They double down. And when they came for him again, and they would, I'd be ready. But first, I needed one more thing. A way out. A clean way out. Not for me. For him. It started with a spreadsheet. Not the kind of thing you'd expect to spark a turning point, I know. But after everything, being lied to, pushed aside, manipulated, and practically starved, there was something comforting about cells and columns that obeyed logic. Numbers don't gaslight you. A total is a total. A lie is a negative balance. I was sitting at my kitchen table one night, balancing what little I had left, $113.42 in my checking account, one maxed-out credit card, a half-used gift card to a local pharmacy, and 2 rent checks away from complete disaster. Grandpa was asleep on the couch, snoring faintly, surrounded by a patchwork of crocheted blankets and snack wrappers from a movie night we'd had earlier. And yet, despite the chaos, I felt something I hadn't in months. Control. See, there's something that happens when you're forced to grow up in someone else's war zone. You start to recognize patterns. You learn to listen more than you speak. You watch people, not just their words, but their habits, their cracks. And after everything my parents had done, I was done waiting for them to change. I was going to change the rules. That spreadsheet? It turned into a project. A full-blown record of every interaction, every expense, every errand, every time my parents had dropped the ball or tried to erase Grandpa from their lives. I built tabs. One for care tasks. One for financial records. One for correspondence, calls, texts, emails. Another just for forged documents. And then I added a new tab. Leverage. This one was different. It wasn't for courts. It was for me. I'd been quiet too long. Good son. Quiet grandson. Doormat sibling. I'd kept the peace. Bit my tongue. But now I had receipts, and I was finally going to use them. It started subtly. I reached out to an old friend of mine from college, Rachel, who now worked for a local news outlet. I didn't tell her everything, just mentioned I had a story. Family dumping a dementia patient in the middle of the night for renovation space. Favoritism. Fraud. Neglect. Not naming names yet. But I could feel her interest spark through the phone. "You sure you're ready to go public with this?" she asked gently. "Not yet," I said. "But soon. Because first, I had to make sure they couldn't retaliate. And for that, I needed a lawyer." But here's where things took an unexpected turn. Remember the legal aid group I'd been working with? Turns out, one of the attorneys there, Ms. Janelle Park, had a particular passion for elder care fraud cases. Her own grandfather had been placed in a facility against his will years ago, and she'd made it her mission to prevent it from happening to others. She offered to take my case pro bono. I still remember sitting in her cramped office across from a dusty fan and a poster that said, "Justice is earned," not given. She flipped through my folder for 20 straight minutes without saying a word. Her eyebrows arched, her lips pursed, and then, when she got to the page with my forged signature, she let out a low whistle. "Connor," she said, looking up, "do you have any idea how rare it is to have this much in writing?" I shrugged. "They've always liked documenting their control." She smiled. "Not kindly. Strategically. Then we're going to use that against them." Within a week, she filed an official petition to challenge the guardianship, cited the fraud, the abandonment, the medical neglect, and my documented, months-long care of Grandpa, complete with receipts, prescriptions, photos, and timestamps. We weren't suing. Not yet. But we were putting them on notice. Once the petition was filed, everything started moving. Fast. For the first time in months, they had to answer to me. I didn't tell them what was happening. Not directly. I let the court documents arrive in their mailbox. I imagined my mom's painted nails tearing open the envelope with curiosity, and then her face slowly draining as she read the words petition for emergency transfer of guardianship. And I waited. 3 days later, my phone rang. Private number. I let it go to voicemail. "Connor," my dad's voice said stiffly. "We need to talk about this situation. Your mother's very upset. There's no need to escalate things like this. We're a family. No mention of the forged signature. No apology. Just panic. And control slipping through their fingers." I didn't respond. Because for the first time, they were playing catch-up. Meanwhile, life started getting better in unexpected ways. My financial aid appeal went through. Turns out, one of my professors had submitted a personal recommendation to the committee without telling me. Said I was the most quietly resilient student he'd ever seen. I cried when I read that email. Like, full-on ugly cried in the campus library bathroom. Rent? Covered. I picked up 2 more tutoring gigs, and one of the parents even offered me a small bonus to help their kid prep for college applications. I wasn't swimming in money, but for once, I wasn't drowning either. And Grandpa? He was having more good days than bad. We finished the Rockwell puzzle and framed it. He started remembering the names of my coworkers. He even made a small garden on the fire escape using plastic cups and leftover tomato seeds. Called it the farm. Every morning, he'd shuffle out, water the sprouts, and give me an update like he was running a produce empire. He didn't know about the guardianship battle, or the fraud, or the documents. But he knew I was there. He knew I cared. And some days, he'd just look at me and say, "You're doing good, kiddo." That was enough. But just when I thought things were settling, they came back. Not with lawyers. Not with apologies. But with manipulation. Vanessa showed up first. I heard the knock on a Saturday morning and opened the door to find her standing there in a beige coat, holding a tray of muffins. I stared. "Seriously?" I said. "They're gluten-free," she said cheerfully, like that made up for 4 months of silence and betrayal. "What do you want?" She didn't even blink. "Can I come in?" "No." She sighed. "Look, I know you're mad. But Mom and Dad didn't mean for things to get so messy." I said nothing. "They're scared. About court. About you turning this into some public thing. Maybe they should have thought of that before forging my name." She winced. "You're really going to make this ugly, huh?" "No, Vanessa," I said quietly. "They made it ugly. I'm just not cleaning it up for them anymore." She shifted uncomfortably, then offered a practice smile. "What if we work something out? Like, maybe they give up guardianship voluntarily. Quietly. No court. In exchange for you not going public." I raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like blackmail." "No, it's diplomacy," she said, clearly proud of the word. I took a long breath. And then, without saying another word, I closed the door. A week later, Janelle called. "They blinked," she said. "We got a letter from their lawyer. They're offering to voluntarily transfer guardianship to you, under the condition that you sign a non-disclosure agreement." I laughed. Hard. "They really think I care about their reputation?" "You don't," she said. "But they do. And that makes it valuable." We didn't sign the NDA. We countered with a full transfer, a notarized apology admitting negligence, and a waiver releasing them from all future medical authority. They agreed. Just like that, it was done. I became Grandpa's legal guardian. And with that signature, the real one, I took back everything they tried to steal. Not just my name, my power. But I wasn't done. Because while the legal part was over, the story hadn't even begun. Once guardianship was officially mine, everything shifted. It wasn't just legal. I could feel the difference in my bones. Like I'd been walking uphill with bricks in my backpack, and suddenly, the incline flattened out. I wasn't rich or powerful in any flashy way, but I had something my parents never expected me to gain. Leverage. They underestimated me for years. They thought I'd bend, then break. But I'd bent, rebuilt, and come back sharper. And now, I had the documents, the authority, the truth. And they had a reputation built on appearances, on charity auctions and church potlucks, and carefully filtered family photos. All I had to do now was light the match. But I wanted it to burn slow. I didn't want revenge that was loud and petty. I wanted satisfying, measured, surgical. So I did what they never expected. I let them reach out first. And they did. 1 week after the guardianship papers were signed, I got a group text from my mom. "Hey, sweetie, we're hosting a little brunch next Saturday. Grandpa's welcome too, smiling face with smiling eyes. It would be good to reconnect as a family." That emoji, like she was offering cookies, not trying to scrub history. At first, I wanted to ignore it, or reply with a picture of the forged signature. But I held back, because I knew something they didn't. Rachel, the journalist friend I'd quietly looped in, had been following along this entire time. And after I told her the full story, with court records and photos and voice memos and texts, she pitched it to her editor as a feature. Not a gossip piece. A human story. A 78-year-old man abandoned at 4 a.m. so his room could be turned into a home office for the favorite child. A grandson who took on the burden in silence. A family that valued space over blood. And the timing? Couldn't have been better. Because my parents' church, an influential, uptight community known for its country club dinners and family values newsletters, was about to host its annual legacy luncheon. My dad was slated to give a speech. The headline? Unwanted. How a family's favorite child replaced their father with wallpaper and Wi-Fi. The article dropped the morning before the brunch. I didn't post it. I didn't promote it. I just sent the link in the family group chat. No caption. No comment. Just the truth. For hours, nothing. Then Vanessa texted, "You're unbelievable." Then my mom called. I didn't answer. She tried again. Then my dad. I let them sit in voicemail purgatory. I wasn't done yet. Because what they didn't know was, I'd also emailed the article to their church newsletter committee, and the editor of the HOA bulletin for their gated community, and the Facebook group where my mom frequently posted Bible verses and pictures of scones with captions like, "Grateful for family, 2 hearts." Let the internet do what it does. That Saturday, I did show up to the brunch. With Grandpa, we dressed nicely. He wore a little hat he liked, even though it was 72 degrees out. I brought him in through the front gate of their suburban McMansion, watching their neighbors sneak glances from their hedges. Vanessa opened the door. "Why are you even here?" she hissed under her breath, eyes twitching like she hadn't slept. I just smiled. "You invited me." Grandpa looked around and said, "Nice wallpaper. Shame about the heartless decisions." I may have fed him that line the night before. Inside, the air was heavy with tension and lavender diffuser oil. My mom greeted us like nothing had happened. Hugs, fake laughs, a too tight smile that looked like it had been stapled to her face. "Connor," she said, teeth clenched. "We need to talk." "In a minute," I said. "Grandpa wants a mimosa." "Since when does he drink?" "Since I started letting him enjoy things." I poured one for him, poured another for me, and waited. The guests, mostly church friends and neighbors, pretended not to recognize the story. But the glances were there. Whispers behind napkins. One lady asked my mom where the bathroom was, then leaned in to whisper, "Is he okay?" nodding toward Grandpa. She meant, "Is this true?" The facade was cracking. Then came the final push. Right before dessert, while my dad was busy mumbling through an apology he hadn't planned to give, I stood up. "Actually," I said, raising my voice just slightly, "there's something I want to say." My mom froze mid-step. Vanessa shot daggers. I smiled. Some of you may have read an article this week about a family who left their elderly father on a doorstep at 4 a.m. to make space for their daughter's Pinterest-perfect office. Gasps. I looked at Grandpa. He doesn't remember everything, but he remembers what love feels like and what abandonment feels like. And so do I. Silence. My mom opened her mouth. I held up a hand. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to free myself from pretending this didn't happen." I pulled a stack of envelopes from my bag, copies of the court documents, the signed transfer of guardianship, and a statement I'd written outlining what really happened, with time-stamped records. I handed them to her. "This is yours now. You don't get to rewrite it later. This is what happened. She didn't speak. Neither did my dad. Vanessa looked down at her plate like it was a crime scene. I turned to Grandpa. Ready to go, Pops? Do they have to come with us? He asked deadpan. I chuckled. Nope. We walked out together. He held my arm. The sun was warm. There were birds chirping in the garden they used to ban us from walking across. On the ride home, he dozed off in the passenger seat with the window cracked, a small smile on his face. That night, I got one final voicemail. My mom. Tired. Rattled. You didn't have to do it this way. But I did. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about destruction. It's about clarity. It's about stepping out of the role they shoved you into and saying, I'm done pretending I owe you silence. They wanted to bury the past. I made it the headline. 6 months later, the house was up for sale. A bland listing on Zillow, stripped of all personality, just white walls and wide angles, hiding the tension soaked into every floorboard. Vanessa had moved out already, according to a mutual friend from high school who messaged me out of nowhere. She's staying with a guy in the city. Rich. Doesn't know a thing about her family drama. Yet, my parents? They'd retreated. Stopped posting online. Their little curated world had cracked, and the cracks never healed. People don't forget stories like that. Not when they're true. Not when they're shared. Not when someone finally stands up and says, here's what they did. Look at it. They never responded to the article publicly. Never filed anything against me. Never apologized. They just disappeared. And that was fine. Because I wasn't waiting for closure. Grandpa and I had made a life. We'd moved to a small duplex on the quieter edge of town. Nothing fancy, but clean, with a little backyard where he could tend to his farm. Tomatoes, basil, a stubborn little lemon tree that never quite bloomed but refused to die. His dementia didn't go away. Of course it didn't. Some days were hard. Some days he called me by names I didn't recognize. Once he asked if we were in Spain. But he still had his moments. Still smiled when I made pancakes. Still told me stories from his army days. Even when they were jumbled, they came from a place of love. And me? I graduated. Somehow. Final thesis turned in, late nights fueled by cheap coffee and quiet rage. The university hosted a small ceremony, and Grandpa insisted on coming even though it meant sitting in the sun for an hour and a half. He wore a wrinkled suit jacket and clapped louder than anyone when my name was called. Afterward, we got burgers. I think that was the first time I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Because what they took from us, the time, the security, the sense of family, I couldn't get back. But what they gave me, without meaning to, was better. A clear view of who I was. And who I wasn't. I wasn't someone they could manipulate. I wasn't the family fallback. I wasn't disposable. I was the one who stayed. The one who fought. The one who protected the only decent man in our family when no one else would. And Grandpa? He never said much about what happened. Maybe he forgot pieces of it. Maybe he chose to. But sometimes, when we'd sit out back and he'd hand me a crooked tomato from the vine, he'd squeeze my shoulder and say, You've got a good heart, son. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. I didn't. Not anymore. The final time I saw my parents was purely by chance, at a grocery store 2 towns over. They were older, more tired looking. My mom's hair had gone almost fully gray. My dad had a cane. They saw me. Stopped. I looked at them for a beat. Then walked past. Not in anger. Just peace. They weren't monsters. Just people who made their choice. And I'd made mine. We didn't speak. They didn't try to follow. And I went home, where Grandpa was waiting on the porch with 2 iced teas and a story I'd heard a dozen times before. This time, I listened all the way through. And when he finished, I laughed. Really laughed. Because even though they tried to write me out of the story, I ended up writing my own. And it was better. It was real. It was ours.